Okay, so here we are again, the Scottish House Price Index. I will be talking particularly about Fife and also particularly about the city of Dundee as well, because we're in these areas. But I will briefly go over the rest of Scotland as well, and you'll see some of the demographics. This is hot on the back of inflation figures out today, a surprise inflation reduction to 1.7%. This means potentially that the Bank of England next month will give an interest rate reduction. We'll have to wait and see if that happens, but it could be on the back of the budget as well, which is at the end of this month as well in October, by the Labour government. It's sitting in power just now, and then possibly a reduction in interest rates, base rates next month as well. Will that flow through though to mortgage rates? That's an interesting question, which I can't answer just now, obviously, because we don't know. But it'll be interesting to see what the mortgage companies will do in the next couple of weeks, because they could foresee this coming with the Bank of England potentially reducing base rates next month. Wouldn't that be great? From 5 to 4.75% base rates. Savings all around for everybody, I suppose, especially if you're on a tracker mortgage or if you're on a variable mortgage as well, which is quite a lot of people out throughout the whole of Scotland itself. But as I said, UK House Price Index in Scotland, this is the information from the Land Registry and all the data up to the end of August 2024. So what's happening? What is the economic summary of what's happening in the house prices in Scotland just now in the regional areas of Scotland? Well, house prices in Scotland have increased by 5.4% in the 12 months to August 2024 to an average of right bang on £200,000 for the average house price in Scotland. Now, that's a provisional estimate. It could be plus or minus that when they get the actual final figures in, and we'll look at that later on as we go through. Now, this was up from the 5% revised estimate in the 12 months to July of 2024 and was higher than the average UK house price annual inflation of 2.8% in the 12 months to August 2024. So 5.4% house price inflation in Scotland, 2.8% in the whole of the UK. So Scotland's faring pretty well in terms of the housing market. However, it's more than likely it's because the average house price in Scotland is significantly lower than the rest of England, and especially London, which is sitting at around about 500,000 for the average house price. So Scotland's about 2.5 times less than that. So that's the key here. You've got to understand it is very affordable to live and work in Scotland, especially if you're working remotely. So what are you waiting for if you're living in England or you're living in London? Just get yourself up to God's country, and you'll be fine. So, the economics summary as well goes on to say that on a non-seasonally adjusted basis, average house prices in Scotland have increased more rapidly between July of 2024 and August of 2024, which is 1.2% in a month. That during the same period, 12 months ago, was 0.9%. So it's gone up faster than it was this time 12 months ago. On a seasonal adjusted basis, average house prices in Scotland have increased by 0.8% between July and August 2024. Now, to explain to people that don't understand about seasonally adjusted figures, non-seasonally adjusted, what they do is there's a smoothing measure just to make sure you don't have massive swings in house prices or indices that they're reporting. And there's a smoothing formula which actually levels it out based on seasonally adjusted information. For example, we all know in summer it's going to go up where there's a huge supply. House prices are obviously going to be settled at a lower figure, and therefore they smooth that out. We also know that sometimes there's going to be points where house prices are the transactional numbers, in other words, they're a lot less than usually at the peak period. Therefore, they skew the figures a wee bit and they make it look like there's a huge jump in house prices. So they smooth that out as well. So that's what seasonally adjusted is all about. A lot of people say it's about smoke and mirrors and lies, damn lies, and statistics. And maybe there's some truth in that, to be honest. Okay, so comparing what is in the economic statement, comparing the provisional UK house price volume estimate for June of 2023 against the house price estimate for June of 2024. This is the number of this is the volume of transactions for properties sold in Scotland in the month. The volume of transactions has decreased by 7.9% in Scotland, but decreased by 25% in the UK. That is not good news, by the way, a decrease in the transactional numbers. Why do I say that? Because the health of a housing market is driven by the transactional numbers and not the price of the property. Let me explain. So when you go to buy a property, you pay 200,000 for it, and it's maybe gone up by 5%. But more than likely, the property you're about to sell has gone up by 5% as well. So basically, what you're doing is you're trading like for like. You're using apples to buy apples, if that makes sense. So it's exactly the same in terms of if you're getting a 5% increase, they're getting a 5% increase. So there's no real winner in that situation as such. You just get the house that you want, and you've hedged yourself against huge price swings because you've got a house already. That's what the price does. It also stabilizes the loan to value, which is against the banks for mortgages, which gives you a better rate if you've got more equity in your property. In other words, if your loan to value in your mortgage is lower. So, in other words, maybe out of £100,000 for a property, £60,000 of that is borrowed from the bank, and £40,000 of that is your equity in the property. Now, that is a risk adverse situation to the bank. In other words, they've got a huge tolerance here if anything goes wrong, and they can get their money back. So therefore, the bank gives you a lower mortgage rate as a result of that. When you're up at 75% and 95% loan to value, in other words, the bank gives you £95,000 and you've got £5,000 in the property yourself, they charge you a higher interest rate because if anything goes wrong with the price, therefore they've got more risk at the fact that they might actually lose money if they have to sell the property and get their money back. That's why they charge you a higher interest rate with a higher loan to value. So lower loan to value, the better it is. But transaction numbers, the health of the market. And let me explain why transactional numbers are the health of the housing market overall. If you have 100,000 properties, 10,000 properties, for example, let's give it 10,000 because that's usually in Scotland. It's round about 10,000 that are sold every single month. So if you have 10,000 properties every single month getting sold, and you have £10,000 spent by the person buying the property on maybe improvements on average with a plumber or an electrician or a joiner or anything like that, or tradesman or tradeswoman to be so to speak, or businesses. If you've got 10,000 and so 10,000 houses times £10,000, you're effectively, everybody's spending £100 million a month in Scotland on improving their properties. Now that's 100 million in turnover to businesses which will service that and do that work for 100 million. Now, so you've got 100 million pounds going into the economy, into local business, into jobs, creating jobs, into people, into shops and all the areas. So that's really good news. However, if your market transactions drops to 8,000 by 20%, for example, then you've only got 80 million going in now. You've still got the £10,000 per 8,000 properties, but now that's 80 million. So we've lost £20 million in the month for local businesses to make money on. So therefore, if they're not making as much turnover, in other words, sales, because they're losing that 20 million because the number of properties getting sold is a lot less, and a lot less people are then spending money on their improvements as a result, just because of the transactional numbers being down, then people are not necessarily needed. That's constant right throughout the process in the local businesses that work there. Hence the reason why you could have payoffs and layoffs and redundancies. This is why you want the housing market, the transactional numbers, to stay the same, more or less, month to month, year on year, to enjoy the stability that the housing market has, but also the stability that the local economy has as well, and the businesses that operate in that local economy for that housing market, and they're in what they call the ancillary, the subcontractors that work in there, and get that business off of these houses getting bought and sold. Hopefully that explains why it's important in the health of the housing market is really all about transaction numbers. So when we see in Scotland the number of transactions, in other words, properties getting sold, has decreased by 7.9% year on year, then it's not a drastic amount in terms of a drop. But when you see it's in the UK, it's by 25%. It means there's a lot of local businesses losing out on potential sales now because there's less properties getting sold and bought. Okay, let's jump back to that then and talk about the economic statement still. So in Scotland, detached houses had the highest annual percentage change of all property types, going up by 7.4% in the 12 months to August of 2024, to £354,000. Flats and maisonettes, in other words, maisonette is a two-story flat, basically. So you've got a downstairs and you've got an upstairs. Usually, typically, it's an upstairs property, and you've got a lower flat on with a maisonette entailed to it, connected to it. So flats and maisonettes had the lowest annual percentage change by 3%. And in the 12 months to August 2024, the average price of a flat in a maisonette in Scotland was £138,000. In Scotland, 30 of the 32 local authority areas showed an increase in the average house prices in the 12 months to August of 2024. You really want average house prices to actually keep going up, but really by inflation, maybe 1 or 2% a year. Now, if inflation on average ends up at 2% by the end of the year, you're hoping that house prices would keep that same level as well of 2%, maybe above, and then potentially if you're an investor or you're a buy-to-let landlord or you're serviced accommodation, then you'll potentially make a return on investment as well and hedge your money, and actually make money on the money, if that makes sense. If you want to know more about that, you can contact us direct about it. So that's the most important thing out of that. So 30 of the 32 local authorities in Scotland showed an average house price increase in the 12 months to August of 2024. Obviously, two didn't. The highest annual, as I said, is in East Renfrewshire, with average house prices increased by 11.2% in the 12 months to August of 2024 to £306,000. The lowest annual percentage change was in Argyll and Bute. Average house prices decreased by 0.4%. So even the decreases are very, very minimal in comparison, almost to the point where it's kind of neutral. It's not really going down at all that much. So the average price in Argyll and Bute is to August of 2024, £189,000. Now, as with other indicators, remember, in the housing market, which typically fluctuate from month to month, it is important not to put too much weight on 1 month set of house price data, but we look at these every single month in terms of the Scottish house prices and the local authority house prices as well. So it's easy for us to come up with some sort of summation about where we believe and extrapolate where we believe and forecast the housing market will go in the next 6, possibly even 12 months in the Scotland area. So let me talk about the annual house price changes and let you just see that in a summary. There you go. Headline statistics: 200,000 average price in Scotland in the last 12 months, 5.4%. Month to month, it's gone up 1.2%. The indices is a measurement figure, which really, to be honest, is a bit mathematical, a bit too detailed, I would say, too micro rather than macro on the whole thing. So here's the annual house price changes over the last 5 years in Scotland, as you can see there by graph. You can see how significantly since August 2020, how the boom period lockdown came up and it all went up, and it went up to about 14%. It started to stabilise again. The Liz Truss fiasco, house prices came down as a result of that in the budget, for that budget with Liz Truss. And then it jumped up again once that was all sorted out and somebody had taken the reins from her, and then started to proceed down as interest rates started to increase. So you can see the house price and inflation coming down, but also as a number, as a fact of the annual house prices were getting settled, then flowing through into this data and then starting to smooth it out. So it goes, down to the zero and negative mark. And then, happy days again. The economy is doing quite well. We've got the best growth apparently in the G8, so the G8 summit figures or something like that in Europe, which is we benchmark against all the rest of Europe in terms of growth. Inflation's under control at 1.7%, and wage inflation's at 5.4%. Employment is sitting at around about 4.2%, which is a full employment situation in terms of the jobs market. So all is looking in the right direction, as well as there's sunshine on the horizon, there's light on the horizon, basically, that potentially base rates is going to come down next month from 5 to 4.75%, because the surprise inflation figures have come out at 1.7%. Now, we say that. we know that sometimes the Bank of England has a different mindset and a different view of this, but we would expect that to happen because it's been 2%, 2.2 the month before, and it's 1.7 now, and potentially next month it'll probably be around about the 2% level as well. So everything's stabilised. So the pound is strong just now against the euro. The pound is strong against the dollar, 1.2 against the euro, 1.3 against the dollar. So you're really wanting to get that down a bit, and that's when you take base rates down as well from 5 to 4.75%, you then weaken the pound a wee bit, but you encourage investment into the country, but then our exports become cheaper for people abroad, which is good news for business here, because you want to export more than you import, because that's when you have a balance of payments deficit, when you import more into the country from other countries. In other words, you're buying their goods and services rather than you actually selling them your goods and services. That's how that all comes about, and that has an effect on the economy, which obviously has a knock-on effect on people's outlook in terms of the housing market, and has a knock-on effect on people's aspirations in terms of buying a property, and then slows down the market potentially, or speeds up the market, depending. But nice stable economy, balanced economy is really what we're looking for, and a balanced housing market overall. So let me talk about the inflation figures again, just jumping back to this for house prices. As you can see, it's started to go up again because optimism, base rates coming down. In Scotland, average house prices increased by 5.4% in the 12 months to August in 2024. Annual price change by a local authority in Scotland. Low numbers of sales transactions in some local authorities, as in, as in Orkney, because in the Shetlands, you're only selling one or two. So this is a seasonally adjusted thing. About it just puts it out of kilter. You could sell one at 200,000 one month, one at 300,000 the next month, and it would look like annual house prices in Shetland, for example, you've only sold one each month, have gone up by 50%. That's what seasonally adjusted and is all about. Okay, so while the house price index makes actually efforts to account for the volatility in this price change and the local levels, it can be influenced by a number of type of properties sold in the given period. Geography, geographies with lower or geography locations with lower sales transactions can realize in the context of the longer term amounts as well. So let's have a look at the house prices by local authority year on year, and you'll see for yourself your own local authority area if we can scan through this. I'm going to zoom in on this so you see this, and I'll start at the top. So if you've got your local authority there, you'll be able to see it as I skim through. You've got Aberdeenshire. So the first one, Aberdeenshire, here. If you just see here, 202,000 in Aberdeenshire this, August 2024, August 2023, 193 or 194,000. Difference, Aberdeenshire has gone up by 4.2%. And you can see Angus as well next, 172 versus 168, 1.9% increase. So 172,000 is the Angus price. You see Argyll and Bute, City of Aberdeen. City of Aberdeen's actually picking up. There's a surprise, because it's usually a negative because of the oil industry. City of Dundee's quite faring quite well. City of Dundee's actually quite robust. It's gone up by 3.2% year on year to an average price of 152,831 from 148,033 pounds. City of Edinburgh, you can see they're going up 6.5% to 339,000. Glasgow, 185,000, 4.5%. Clackmannanshire, 181,000, 8.3%. Wow. Clackmannanshire is faring very well in terms of house price increase. If you're an investor there, you're obviously going to be doing very well year on year. Dumfries and Galloway, 169,000, 3.5% increase. You can see East Ayrshire, East Dunbartonshire, East Lothian, 308,000, up 5.7%. Falkirk, 172,000, up 5.5%. Fife, 178,164, only gone up 0.8%. Now, Fife's actually got quite a lot of property on the market right now, quite a lot of high value properties right now. So it's taken a wee bit longer to sell as a result. Hence the reason why that number starts to stabilise out. Plus, there's a huge injection of new builds in the Glenrothes and the Kirkcaldy area, and especially the St Andrews area as well. And there'll be eventually in the next couple of years, you'll probably find the Cooper area has got quite a lot coming in with their plans for the Cooper area. And also potentially in the East Nuke area, there's some coming on there as well, getting built. There's plans afoot for the East Nuke as well. And Dunfermline is getting new builds as well. So you can see why Fife stabilises out, because once you put more supply into the economy, you tend to find that house prices stabilise as well. So Highlands, 214,000, 5.9%. You can go through in Mid Lothian, 243,000, up 8.7% year on year. North Ayrshire, 137,000, up 6.3%. North Lanarkshire, up 8.4% to 149,000, almost. Perth and Kinross, 243,000 average, 2.2% up. Scottish Borders, 210, up 7.1%. See, there's the Shetland and Islands, up 24%, but it's only small transactional numbers. We'll see the transactions next, actually, and you'll be able to understand why that is then. It's gone up that amount because it's not really accurate as such. It's just because there's a low transactional numbers. South Ayrshire, 177,000, 4.1%. Stirlingshire, you can see 254,000, 4.7%. But in Scotland overall, you can see 199,971 to be precise, rather than 200,000, up from 189,745. So up 5.4% year on year. So hopefully that's giving you an insight into there. So let's look then. Let's look at the graph, which actually tells you that if you're into your coloured graphs and that, this will give you the hotspots in the areas where all the prices are quite high in red. If it's deep red, they're over 230,000. And if it starts to get lighter and lighter as we go into an orange, that's the midpoint, which is 150 to 169,000. And then when you go into the blues, that's the lower value money, the lower value areas. It doesn't mean to say that that area is going down in price. It just means it's a lower value area in comparison. So this is right across Scotland by the price band is by colour. So you can see the Perth and Kinross area quite high. Fife's actually faring quite well, 178,000, as I said. So hence the reason why it's that colour. In the same way, the Dundee, Angus area, you go into Aberdeen, it's actually quite higher as well. Highlands and Islands quite high. Lothians and Edinburgh, clearly quite high. Dumfries and Galloway and that, you can see it's levelling out, as well as Glasgow and Lanarkshire, North Lanarkshire, South Lanarkshire, and Ayrshire overall. So hopefully that's given people an insight. If you're not numerical, this might help you a bit more. Let's look at the transactional level then. So what does the transactional level tell you? As I said before, transactional level is really important because it tells you what's actually been sold in terms of the transactional numbers, which I told you is really the health of the property market overall. So transactional numbers are taken to June of 2024 because it's a wee while before they actually come through. So again, you can see that it marries up with yours. So Aberdeenshire, 389 sold in June of 2023, June of 2024, 296. So it's gone down quite significantly in the Aberdeenshire area. So therefore, as I said before, basically when you see the Aberdeenshire area from 389 minus 296, you've got a drop in 93 properties. Now, if everybody spent £10,000 refurbishing their property, that's potentially just under £1 million lost in value in sales to local contractors because the transactional numbers dropped year on year. And it's the same when you go through. So that's why it's important to assess the health of the housing market on the transactional numbers rather than actually the value of the property. Value of the property is good like for like trade and investing and stuff like that. So you can see transactional numbers. You can look at your area. City of Glasgow, 1,028 the year before, 950 this year, which is pretty good. City of Edinburgh has actually gone up. So Edinburgh's faring quite well, transactional numbers. So is City of Dundee, almost like for like year on year. And when you look on Ayrshire, kind of like for likes, East Dunbartonshire up. You've got East Lothian, like for like, East Renfrewshire, down quite significantly. Falkirk, down a wee bit. Fife, okay, down about 50, which is about 8% or thereabouts. So Fife is still faring quite well in transactional numbers. Mid Lothian, Inverclyde, North Lanarkshire, no major drops there. See, the Orkneys is 29 versus 29, which is not very good. And Shetlands as well, as I said before. The low value transactions means that the house prices make it look like they've gone up significantly in value, but they've not. They're just different mix of properties being sold. And then you've got the Shetland, you've got the South Ayrshire, you've got South Lanarkshire, Stirling, West Lothian. So West Lothian 289 versus 290 this year, and overall in Scotland, 9,380 sold versus 8,493, which is that drop, as I said in the very beginning on the economic statement, of the drop in transactional volumes of 7.9% as opposed to the whole of the UK, which is 25%. That's definitely not what you want, the position you want to have. So then you have to ask the question is, will English property prices actually affect? Will they affect the fact that their transactional numbers were going down? Will that have a knock-on effect to the Scottish housing market? So just to give you a wee review of that before, I'm not really sure if you saw it the last time because I was talking about it too much. And you'll see your numbers coming through there, transactional numbers of properties being sold. Got Fife, got City of Dundee, City of Edinburgh, City of Glasgow, overall in Angus and Aberdeenshire. Okay, so hopefully that's given you a real good insight into the transactional numbers, the price of the properties. We can just draw into what types and what they're going for, as I said before, the detached and the semi-detached and that. So the average price in Scotland for a detached is 354,000, semi-detached 213,000, terraced 170,000, flat or maisonette 138,000. Overall, combined together, it's 199,971. But you can see overall the different house types have gone up on average over that time. Inflation's sitting at 1.7%. So when you think about it, house prices are still outperforming inflation overall. So again, it gives you a real great insight into where it is overall. In August of 2024, the most expensive area to purchase a property is the City of Edinburgh. Average cost of £339,000. In contrast, the cheapest was East Ayrshire, as I said, 131,000. We talked about the sales volumes, the amount of between the property registration and that, how they were lagging a wee bit behind, but that shouldn't affect things too much. Sales volumes, property status. Let's look at another couple of graphs, give you a real good insight into what's going on again. We'll just flip through and I'll bring them up. Okay, so there's the sales volumes year on year. 5-year sales volumes. What does this tell us? Well, in June of 2020, you can see there straight away, 4,089 properties sold, significantly down, about 50% of what it should be normally. Now, that's really down to the pandemic when that happened and lockdown came along and actually transaction numbers stopped and dropped like a stone. But you can see they recovered quite quickly in 2021. And as opposed to the normal sales volumes, which was around about the 8,000 and 9,000, it was 11,000. So it was really the 3,000 or 4,000 made up in the following year, which caused the boom as a result with everybody buying and lack of supply. And then it started to level out in 2022 and 2023, and now an oversupply in 2023, hence the reason why prices didn't go up significantly to 2023. And then they've now started to come down again, transaction numbers. So prices have actually started to go up a wee bit more, which is why you've got 5.4% overall. Okay, so let's look. The next one is property status. You can see that new build. So if you're buying a new build, it'll cost you in Scotland an average of £316,354, up 0.2% on a monthly change. Annual change, 27.7%. So new build house prices have gone up significantly over the last year. Now, why is that? Because building standards are a lot higher and efficiency standards, in other words, energy efficiency standards, are a lot higher as well. They're trying to get to this passive house, passive house or whatever it's called, status, which is a huge energy efficiency level. It's top level energy efficiency. And there's an argument between the governments just now and the local authorities and the builders as well, saying, is it really worth trying to get to that standard to the point where you price everybody out of the market and you push every single property price way beyond what it should be? There's a debate to say that's not the right thing to do. Nobody else seems to be doing it around the world. It seems to just be us that's driving this forward. So that's the new build situation. Average resale property, by the way, will cost you 186,000, significantly lower. And that's literally because they've not got the same build standard that anybody else had. So in other words, if you buy an ex-local authority house, a 3-bedroom, its average price is 186,000 to buy it. Whereas if you buy a new build, average price is, as I said before, the 316,000 to buy a new build property. It's it's quite a difference. Hence the reason why a lot of local authorities, are going to the resale market to buy back their local authority council stock that they sold off previously, because they can't afford to build new build because it is so expensive in comparison, and they think buying it back will actually allow them to get better value for money and house more people. But what we don't realise here is they're not creating any more houses, therefore they're taking houses out of the market for first-time buyers and for actual buyers themselves, and therefore restricting supply. You know what happens when restricting supply comes along? Price goes up. So is the local authorities actually causing a problem here? That's a question to ask. Okay, so buyer status. But the average buyer status, this is the buyer status here. First-time buyer spends on average for a house 160,000. A former owner-occupier, in other words, somebody that's got a house before it's buying another house, spends an average of 241,000. Both have gone up 4.8% and 6.1% on an annual price change. And finally, we've got the funding status. This is actually quite an interesting one for the funding status. This is how people fund their properties. Somebody that's got cash to buy, they're paying on average 181,000 for a property. So this is the point. If you're looking for a cash buyer and you're at £300,000 for a property, it's pretty unlikely you're going to get a cash buyer quite easily. If you're at £181,000 for a cash buyer, looking for a cash buyer for your property, you're more than likely to get a cash buyer because that's the average price that they're paying right now. As opposed to a mortgage person, somebody that's got a mortgage, they pay a wee bit higher for a property, £208,955, and their annual price change has gone up by 6.1%. The cash buyer's gone up by 4.1%. So what does this mean, and what is this? What should we assume overall? Well, the good news is, as I said before, inflation surprisingly out today at 1.7%. So surprisingly, it's gone down significantly as opposed to what it was last month. Will that stimulate the Bank of England then to think maybe we should have a base rate cut next month? And will that stimulate the housing market? And I think the answer to that is absolutely. It'll give buyers more confidence. They can fix in better deals, potentially if it flows through and it comes through in the mortgage market overall. So hopefully that's given you a real good insight into the Scottish house prices and where each house price banding is just now. And until next time, guys, if you're needing to ask any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm Jim Parker for Fife Properties and Dundee Properties TV. Bye-bye for now.